Good afternoon, folks. Hopefully everybody is dealing with the walk successfully over here. Appreciate you making the transit. Hopefully lunch is processed so we can have a nice, enjoyable afternoon conversation about a lovely topic. How many of you have been using Teams in your organization in the last 6 months? Most of you. For a 300 level session, I would hope that would be the case. Otherwise, we might have a more remedial discussion that we're going to have. So great, let's jump into it. My name is Andrew Bybee. I'm actually a member of the Microsoft Teams organization. I work on a number of things. Among them, one of the things that we work on is how we actually help you as IT administrators manage your custom applications as part of Microsoft Teams. Now, interestingly enough, we have a whole other set of information that we're going to be talking about this week on Teams and calling and meeting and messaging. And I've been getting some great questions and answers down at the booth. So I know that you guys have a ton of questions. Today, we're going to focus in on just a couple of sort of specific points. One of those is really going to be about understanding the value of custom applications as part of supporting your mission with Teams and helping your teams work more effectively together. And yesterday, if you watched any of the session with Lori and with Jeff, you saw that we're actually talking a lot about how you can tailor your teamwork for not just individual organizations, but also really thinking about it on an industry basis. And so we really want to understand how you can now start to leverage that value, not just for the apps that you have out of the box, but in fact for the apps that you can build and tailor. Now, as part of that, one of the things that comes up quite a bit is when you're an organization, really thinking about how do you manage that information? How do you manage the control of who gets to do that? So we want to drill in a little bit about not just the technology for it, but also sort of the patterns and practices for it. And we'll actually have a great customer example that we'll bring up that will talk to you and share some stories about how they're working with that today. And then finally, we're going to review some of the tools and the tech, and we'll take some questions at the end if you have ideas or thoughts around what you're trying to do inside of your organization and how we can help you get farther and faster with that. So really out of today, I think there's a couple of things to just sort of really anchor, I think. One of it is that really there's a set of tools that if you're dealing with apps inside of Teams, there's a set of tools that we want to make sure you're taking advantage of. And B, there's a bunch of new stuff that's actually coming down the pipe very soon that we want to start giving you some visibility on so you can start planning for that as part of your deployment. Now, since most of you have raised your hand, sort of at the initial question here, really Teams is many, many things, but one of the core concepts that we've talked about both yesterday and even just as we've sort of worked with the product over the last year and a half has really been about this idea that it's not just a chat and messaging product, it's really a hub experience. And what does a hub mean actually? And it's really about starting to bring your tools into a consistent sort of pane of glass that allows you to actually drive decisions and action faster, but also be able to actually do that in a way that works across your devices. I can't even tell you how many times I've been, working on my phone, walking here and there, messaging with people, joining in meetings in the car, as I'm driving to work. You saw maybe Heidi yesterday sort of in her little commute from 10 feet across the stage, but obviously I've got more of the 13, 14 mile commute where I'm gonna take the call in the car, get into the garage, drop the call, jump back on the call when I get to the office. So, I mean, that's sort of everyday life for, I think, a lot of us these days is having to be mobile and think about that. So Teams is there to help you sort of work across those things, but it's also help you to work across those things together. And I think when you think about the hub, and you think about the concept of you bringing people and content and context together, we think that's really where those things start to light up. Now, that is a basic Teams value proposition. Now, to the extent that there is now an additional proposition that comes with the idea of now being able to have apps that can extend both the content and the types of actions and tasks that you can take inside of that hub, I think it starts to drive a lot of value in terms of what we're doing there. How many of you have actually, if you've been using Teams, how many of you have pinned a tab in the last 6 months? Okay. So when you're pinning a tab, you're actually trying to do what? You're trying to say, hey, this document is important to me, but you're pinning a tab with something, right? So that's an app that's helping you bring that in. But there's obviously other things that we're now starting to bring in here as far as apps and third parties, and now also custom experiences that take advantage of those same types of integration capabilities. So when we think about that, really the work then is to say, hey, if I'm going to start building a custom app, I got all these third-party tools. Microsoft has talked a lot about their store. Shouldn't I just be using the apps in the store? Well, there's actually a lot of benefit that comes from you actually being able to start thinking about your custom app taking advantage of those integration capabilities. One of those pieces is that all of those benefits, the context that comes with it, the idea that you can target specific teams or individuals, the idea that, hey, everything can have a conversation about it. Just like I would have that pinned item that I put into that channel, I can now have a conversation and that conversation comes back. All of those things can now be benefits that you can accrue for your information. And when you think about now being able to do that in a way that's secure to your data in your organization and is available across mobile and desktop, you start to get some really interesting benefits that come out of that. But really where the secret sauce we think comes in is when you start to look at some of the scenarios we showed yesterday in the general keynote and think about how that extrapolates to your organization. Think about how you can now start to take advantage of that idea of bringing the capabilities where people are actually doing their work and now making that available in a way that's tuned for the processes or the information or the services that you're trying to make available to them as part of your organization. And even recognizing that in some cases you might be working either in an industry that's sort of specialized, or you might be working across industries if you're maybe a larger organization. Maybe you have, a financial sort of arm and you have a manufacturing arm of some type. So think about it as you might want to be able to tailor those experiences quite a bit. So when you look at these things, then what becomes interesting then is to recognize that with custom applications, it's not just about the tech. And so I think that's an important statement. I want to make sure that I'm landing with everybody here today, because it's a technical conference and it's a technical session at 300. So why aren't I just talking about the tech? Well, if you think about the way that we talk about teams, if you saw the session yesterday, how we lead in that session, it was this very artistic notion of performers kind of moving around, and sometimes they're in unison and sometimes they're collaborating and working together. And the whole point was that it's a team effort. And it is a teamwork process. And so in the same way that it's, working together is not just about the tech, it's also about the way that you work and the style of how you work. When you think about a custom application and you're thinking about how do I build this and manage it and put it out into our environment in a way that's going to be successful, you want to think about the style and the way that you're doing that, and think about the patterns and practices that go along with that. So we're going to talk a bit more about that in a second. But one of the ways to think about that then is to look at it and say, hey, when I'm building my application, what am I building it for? So when you're building it, in this case, you might want to think about usage patterns, things that you do every day, things that you do every week, things that you maybe do on a more infrequent basis, quarterly, annually, what have you. They may all be HR. Does that mean you should have one HR app? Maybe, but let's take one example. So if I have, for example, a time tracker app, what does the time tracker app do? Well, the time tracker app might help me track my time. So we showed you an example yesterday with a frontline worker, somebody that was working in a retail environment, had to clear out lettuce that had been contaminated and need to be moved out. So, okay, having to make sure that they can actually track their time in an efficient way with our system of record, great, that's a good task. But what about when they maybe have a leave or an extended vacation? How do they think about that in relation to what they're trying to interact with you as a service? And then as you think about questions that they might have relative to time or leave of absence or other things, maybe that's the type of capability that you want to bring in. So the key point here is to recognize that you want to be sort of aware of both kind of the process that you're supporting, as well as sort of how people are actually using that information and the frequency of those things. Now, when we put these things together, what you actually start to see is there's quite a bit of benefits that come from me actually using this environment with teams. Part of this is about looking at it and saying, hey, I have actually this hub, this canvas for me to paint with. And inside of this canvas, I actually want to be able to take advantage of all these different integration points that are inside Teams. Now, many of you raised your hand when I asked if you had pinned a tab. How many of you have actually used a messaging extension in the last 6 months? Fewer, okay. So, gives you a sense, not all of these capabilities are used the same way, and a lot of it depends on what the process is and what the app is. From our telemetry, what we tell you is bots are very popular. We tell you that tabs are very popular because people like to be able to interact and they like to be able to pin that content. But we've seen people do some very, very interesting things with messaging extensions, and we've seen them do some very interesting things with notifications. And actually, this week at the conference, we're going to be talking a lot more about how voice and video can start to play into the types of experiences that you can build. We're not going to talk as much about voice and video right now. We do have a session later this afternoon at 4 o'clock. I encourage you guys to come and check that out. That'll be sort of a broader overview of some of the pieces that we're doing. So the last piece here is recognize that you're also trying to target environments for both individuals as well as for teams. And so when we talk about that, it means that you want to be mindful about not just what they're trying to do, but sort of who they're trying to use it with. Now, a couple of the points here. When people talk about building custom apps, a lot of times the biggest question that comes in is like, well, if I want to build a custom app, that means I'm going to have to get started with Azure, right? Like I'm going to have to spin up a web service, and I got to pay the monthly costs, and maybe my organization already has it, or maybe they don't, but it's kind of expensive, and I got to like spin up a web server, and it just sounds really complex. Guess what? You already have a great foundation. If you're an Office 365 customer, have a great foundation with SharePoint. Every single team has a SharePoint site behind it. That SharePoint site can have pages, it can have content, it can have lists that you can collaborate on. And one of the things we talked about yesterday was the ability now to bring those lists and those pages directly into context inside of Teams. So you've got the experience that you can now bring. So if you have something in SharePoint, you can now pin that as a tab inside of Teams. And you've now begun your journey towards actually building a custom application. Similarly, a lot of people sort of wonder like, well, but I've got to work through this process. What are the tools for it? How do all these things come together? We've got actually an application that is Teams App Studio. It's actually available in the store. And you're able to actually get Teams App Studio and start building those things right away. Actually, not only do the sort of presence and the registration of it, but also just the look and feel. And there's a bunch of other resources there that we'll look through in just a few minutes. So this is great. Andy, this is fine. This is all custom apps. How does this relate to me actually managing my application and being successful with it, right? Success is the key word there. So with that, what I wanted to do is don't just listen to me. So we have a great customer of ours, Patience Wooten, is here with a great colleague of her, Preen. So we'll have them come up, and we'll want to talk about their experience a little bit. Patience?
Thank you.
Thanks. Preen? Thank you. All right, so tell us about Dentsu. I'm going to come over here.
All right, so Dentsu, for those that aren't familiar, is a media and advertising agency. There is 40,000 of us across 145 different countries, and there's over 170 different brands. Each brand might have a different capability that they bring to our network to make us a real powerhouse. Someone might be customer relationship management, it might be data and insight, it might be mobile first, but everyone brings something to the business, and everyone needs a specific tool to make them successful. So our team is responsible for the collaboration tools. So what we need to do is share with you what tools we use, how to use them, and then where to access more information. So before we go on to the bots, let's talk about where we first built our information.
Yeah.
We built it in a SharePoint communication site, and what you can see is a really visual UI UX. So let's imagine we're a new starter in Dentsu, and we've just arrived, and we're not sure what to use. So if we click on this first tile here, we can see a little bit of information about Office 365. We can see a video to find out more. And we've also now learned that we've got GoTo, our service desk, which is powered by ServiceNow, or our company intranet, Neon, on the right-hand side. So it's interesting, but it doesn't really tell me very much. So let's hit Explore More Apps at the top. So now we can see, OK, well, we've got quite a few tools just in Office 365 here. So if we go into Microsoft Teams, Preen, and then what we can see is a little bit of text, some related skills, and then underneath it tells you the benefits. It tells you some related content that might be useful. And every page on the Office 365 applications looks and feels the same. But what happens if you're not really into reading content? You know, there's a lot of features, as we all know, in Office 365 that are updated every single day, and it's quite hard to keep up to date. So we built a blog, which we update every week. But again, if you don't want to read something, we also have a vlog, which you can watch. But we were thinking earlier this year that we haven't actually really practiced what we've preached, because we say that Teams is our strategy, but this is built in SharePoint. So actually, if we're trying to encourage people to, as Andy said, look in that single pane of glass, we need to produce something in Teams. So what we decided to do was, with Preen's help here, is to iterate what we were working on and build a custom app. So here you can see on the left-hand side, we've built a Dentsu Aegis Network store. And in there is just one application. What we've done is we've managed this as admins to say that currently this is the only tenant-level application that all of our company can use. If you did want to create or upload your own personal bot, you could as well. So let's have a look. So if we start interacting with it, we can now see a welcome message. This is a randomized message as well, just in case you access it quite a lot. and we've just driven it to one button. The reason we've given one button is because we want to encourage people to learn how to use the bot if they haven't interacted with it before. So what you can see is a carousel card. If we click through, you can see WorkSmart, you can see Neon, you can see GoTo. These were the 3 applications we just showed you on the SharePoint communication site. And now we can see a Hero web part underneath. But what happens if you don't want to use those buttons? What you can see now on the screen is the bot menu. This is the first way to understand intents and entities. And we're trying to drive people to understand how to frame a question. So for example, if I want to find out what is Microsoft Teams. So we showed you this earlier in the SharePoint site, but now we've got more of a tweet-like consolidated version of what Microsoft Teams is. We've got a link to Microsoft Teams. We've got a link to read more where we found all that content earlier. Or we've got a success story. So the reason we have a success story is because, as we said, we have 170 different brands. So how one business works might be interesting to how another business works, and they can learn from each other on what tools are making them more efficient and effective. So we've got success stories, but what about if we don't know what application we're going to use? We now need to frame a how do I question. So we could learn how do I automate my work, for example. So if we start asking the bot this, it's now going to look through, leveraging the Q&A maker and the Lewis that we've put behind it. And we can find out, OK, well, I can automate my tasks here, and I can create a workflow. This is using Microsoft Flow. So what you'll now do is it's now pointing you not just to what is Microsoft Flow, but it's actually telling you how you can use it. And as you click through again, using that carousel format, you can see how to learn how to build your flow. Again, driving efficiency. So this is the way that you would interact with a bot. But what about the tabs at the top? This is a core capability of a great bot. So here, now what we've done is we've tied up our ecosystem. We've got the apps in Teams, and we can now see that we've got our WorkSmart site here, not siloed. If we click through to the training videos, we've also created a Power App. In that Power App, we've got all of the Office 365 videos. Interestingly enough, here, what we've done as well is cater for our other languages that we haven't necessarily, that don't necessarily speak English. So we have some tabs here, but what about the personality of a bot? Because our company is a media company. The average age of the company is about 22 to 25. So it can't be something boring, it can't be something stern. It needs to be quite fun. I'd like to apologize in advance for these jokes. These are written by Perrine, who's on stage. So feel free to have a comment with her after. The idea is that it's meant to be a bit of fun as well as learning, as well as finding your information. So we know that in this modern world, people want to know things like, what do you look like, what's your selfie? But also you can find out other interesting facts like, how old are you and when were you built? So what happens, though, is if someone asks a question and we don't have the answer, that's perhaps where it becomes really important. So how do you find out when it's not working? Because the bot is only as good as the knowledge it contains. So what we can now do is ask a question that it doesn't know. And this is where the message becomes really important. So what we've done is we set the expectation that we weren't sure what the information they were looking for was. We've set the expectation that we've given ourselves 2 days to find that, because that's our SLA. Obviously, we have weekends. She's not just working on the weekends. And in addition, if you want to submit more feedback, and this is where we've brought in the adaptive cards. So previously, we were using Hero. We're now using adaptive. So the one thing about this is you can kind of direct a user to either request content or submit an error. But it can show you a little bit more about the capabilities inside. And we could put our own email address underneath to say, I want to know when you've updated that, or I want to share that issue. You'll also notice that we put in error or bug. Now, at the minute, this is a new service. Bot Framework is a very new concept at work. And we really need to manage the way that errors and issues are being tracked. So what happens when we've logged this ticket? Well, it sends a JSON message through the bot, through a telemetry tracker, and into application insights in Azure. We have a daily monitoring report that identifies the user ID and the feedback. And this is really, really critical into continuous success. We also measure and track the SharePoint communication site that we showed you earlier. So we use SPO Insights, and this pulls through a SQL database and into Power BI. What we do here is we identify the user journeys. So if a user is hitting something to request content or find information, but it's taking them 7 clicks to get there, we need to pull that information back to the front to make sure that they're being as efficient as possible. But what if we've requested something and we don't think that you've answered it? Or what if we really want a capability and we're not sure that you've added it in? So what we've done is very similar to the T-bot. We've created a What's New tab. So in our team, we have a real GitHub mentality. We like to share what we're working on and be very open about it. And what you'll notice is the last one is Bing. So what we've done is we've used cognitive services to help spell check. This feedback was actually driven from a user just last week or the week before. And so we've been working away to help add that feature in. And it's really reduced tickets as well. So we've talked about what's new, and we've talked about why we're doing it. But what's happening in the strategy, and why are we doing this? So for us, we originally produced this bot to help automate the way that we were working, to help reduce the amount of tickets that were going to the service desk for end-user-related questions that weren't actually technical issues. And now what we need to do is think about how we widen it. So Andy earlier was talking about that daily circle. And now we're looking at the weekly circle. So we're working with HR, we're working with our tech teams and with our ServiceNow team to go, okay, well, we think we've automated quite a lot for what we do in collaboration. So how can we help you with your processes to leverage this, to leverage Lewis, and become more efficient and effective so we can really focus on our actual job, advertising? So that's the strategy on what we're working on. And then for the technical updates, these are our main focuses at the moment. So alongside deep links, we're also working on multi-language support. You know, as we mentioned, we have 145 different countries in which we operate. We really need to remember all of our audiences and that they don't just speak English. I think as well, one of the things we want to do is in advertising, we want to continually innovate the way that we're working, not just with bots, but with everything. So we're going to use the HoloLens to help promote the bot. So we'll be using Vuforia cards, we'll be using the image that you saw in the selfie earlier, and we'll be sharing that and trying to generate a little bit of excitement to hopefully promote this and widen the scope and hopefully the success of bots. So we'll be doing, sorry Andy, we'll be doing a talk and talk on Thursday at 3 p.m. if anyone's got any further questions on how we built it, or for Perrine to share a bit more about the development back end.
So that's, I mean, there's amazing sort of how many different components and sort of aspects you guys have had to sort of think through.
Yeah.
The birthday comment I noticed was in May. So tell me a little bit about sort of the project and kind of how long you guys have been working on it and kind of what was the starting point, the background for you guys.
So what we found was some great capabilities were coming into Office 365, and we didn't necessarily have the skills in-house. So Perrine here is our first of a graduate program we've just set up, whereby we're pulling in some of the latest and really innovative workers. We're trying to help them to kind of challenge what we're doing and challenge the status quo. So Perrine here has been here for just over 4 months, had not too much knowledge of Azure or the Microsoft framework, and has, within a series of months, got something operational where we haven't had bots in the workplace at all. So I think it does show how well, you know, the App Studio does lend itself to perhaps someone that might not be a developer. I mean, Perrine is an astrophysicist. But
not required for Teams App Studio.
No.
The degree always helps.
Using the manifest, using the card editor, I think you can have a go yourself, and I would certainly encourage people just to have a play around.
Yep.
I think, you know, we really want to encourage in our own teams innovation, and I think this is a great platform, a safe platform to work on.
Awesome. And obviously, I think having the feedback mechanism is super helpful. I know from a product perspective, we certainly, you know, think about feedback as a critical component of driving kind of the product forward. What's been some of the feedback that you're getting from users so far?
So I think one thing that we really did, and we saw the lighthearted side of it, was people do ask those kind of questions. And I think if you don't add that silly content, it does fall down.
Yeah.
But I think as well, you guys were very helpful when we were first developing this, because we were so excited about the concept of the art of the possible. I think we weren't perhaps using the right cards. So I think it's really important to leverage the hero card and the adaptive card, because it can help drive your users, especially those that haven't used it, into actually framing their question properly, understanding what an intent is and what an entity is. So I think that's really helped us shape in the way in which we're rolling things out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Congrats. Good job on putting that together. Thanks so much. All right. Thank you. Very cool stuff. I will just remind you, the astrophysics degree is not required to use the product, just in case anybody was, you know, going to start thinking about some distance learning for that kind of thing. But very cool and amazing to see sort of how much you've been able to put together in sort of 4 short months. The thing that I think hopefully you'd really take out of that demo is that, again, it's really about not just the tech. Yes, we can build cards, yes, we can build bots, but think about it as sort of the way that you're landing that technology is as important as what the technology actually is, right? How many of you have interacted with a bot that has, well, forget even the personality for a second, it doesn't even understand what you're saying, even if you know that it's only supposed to do 2 or 3 things. So all of the tech is really there just to try and make it more natural for you to actually try and get your job done, which is really what Teams is trying to do. So we saw some interesting stuff in there. It's a great story. I encourage you, again, they're going to do a Chalk Talk down at the Expo on Thursday, so I encourage you to stop by if you have more questions for Perrine and for patients to be able to actually talk through maybe some of the specifics of that. And so what I wanted to do with the sort of remaining balance of time is to talk then about some of the specifics about the technology that's sitting behind some of those pieces. So one of the things that we're actually doing here is as we get into, there we go. As we get into the notion of managing teams, there is actually a life cycle that we think about there. So they've published the app. The app was actually published in their app store. The users are able to discover that app, and then I have a choice about sort of how I'm going to install that app, either for me as an individual or potentially inside of one of the teams or multiple of the teams that I'm actually managing. But what actually goes behind that life cycle? So what's interesting there is recognize that what you're actually building there is you're taking those capabilities, you're building your bot, you're doing all your work with Lewis and Azure and all the other sort of pieces there, but at the end of the day, you still have to bring that together into an actual application definition. So you're now talking about a manifest, and that manifest gets formatted, zip file, et cetera. So where does it go? So inside of Teams, we actually have a collection of catalog stores. Some of those catalog stores are for the default apps that we provide for you from Office 365. Some of those are basically for the apps that are coming from AppSource and from the store that are specific for your organization. And then some of those are actually the applications and our registration of those on a peer team basis. So we want to know which apps and which teams. So we're tracking all of that information. Now, as part of that, you're also able to then describe some settings that help you manage those and then be able to actually push those through the store and be able to now go through the process of installing an app and consenting and sort of doing the process that many of you have seen probably at this particular point. Now, one of the things that's going to be really important to note is that if you're using Teams for chat and messaging, you have likely seen the introduction of messaging policies inside of the new Teams and Skype administration console. And so one of the key things that we're now talking about and will be providing very soon is actually the ability for you to now start describing app policies so that not only can you actually describe these and make these apps available on a per tenant basis or basically for your entire organization, but you'll actually be able to start now providing these applications on a per user basis with policy that you're assigning. And so that policy now opens up sort of a whole new world of opportunities. And so what I wanted to do is just show you sort of what's there today and sort of how that would start to sort of manifest as we go forward. So let's just jump over here real quick. And we'll jump here. So what you see here is I have a demo application, demo tenant. I'm in the store. You can see that in this case, I have my line of business application as part of my tenant app catalog. So the tenant app catalog in this case shows up as your tenant name in the left-hand side of the store. So when you're navigating, you'll see this. Any apps that you publish that are specific for your organization will show up here. And in this case, I've got one. This is my Contoso talent. And you can see that this is both a personal scope and a team scoped application. Now, when I'm actually doing the chat, you can see that now these things show up. And so, for example, the recruiting bot has cards and things that I can interact with. So a lot of what we just saw with the Dentsu sort of implementation is obviously using this exact same infrastructure. So they have the app. All the capabilities that they showed you were described in that application manifest, were then published into the line of business store, and then deployed out to the users that they're basically testing and evaluating that with. Now, if you haven't seen it, inside of the Microsoft 365 Admin Center then, where this gets exposed is that inside of your services and add-ins, this is our tenant level settings for Teams, you'll see that there's this apps category here. And the apps category actually has 3 different groups, one for each of those catalogs that I had mentioned to you. So one is around the ability for me to actually choose which of the default apps is going on. So for example, if you are using Azure DevOps, you can go ahead and say, hey, I want to make that available as one of the default apps that I have. If you happen to be using something else, obviously, and you don't want people to use Azure DevOps, you could turn that off. So I could, in fact, go ahead and say, hey, I want to disable that. Similarly, you'll notice that when I went ahead and actually uploaded the app to the tenant app catalog, that I now have this company app showed up, and I can choose to enable or disable these. Now, why would I choose to do this if it's my application? That seems a little strange. The value of that is actually if you are now either retiring applications, or if you find that there was a problem in the application and you want to disable it, then you can go ahead and do that, and it'll disable for everybody. Now, that has a bunch of value if it's an app that's sort of been through your review process, but you also want to be sort of mindful of that. Now, the other thing is that we have multiple settings for external apps. Now, why do we have that? So with the store, one of the things that we find is that if you're in an IT organization and you're concerned about sort of data security, which is most of you, one of the feedback items that we hear quite a bit is hey, we'd love to turn on third-party apps, but it needs to go through our security review first. And so if I'm going to go through a security review, I want to make sure that I don't enable those apps until they've actually completed review. And once we've completed the review, I don't want to have to, I can't review every single day. So I have a review process or a cycle. Let's say it happens every month or every 2 months or quarter or something like that. And so these settings are meant to try and help reflect that. So if I don't want to allow any external apps, I haven't done any security review, I can turn them all off if I want. Now I can still use my tenant apps, so that catalog entry will still be there, and I can still use the Office 365 apps, the default apps. So again, this is a choice that you can make as part of managing those behaviors. Now the other thing that's interesting is sideloading. What is sideloading? Sideloading is I can now take that app and I can only install that app into an individual team that I'm already an owner of. It doesn't make it available for everybody in the organization, but it's just in my team. This is a great practice to use for development, for example. So if you're getting started, you can use sideloading as a capability to now test out the apps. When you turn off sideloading for the organization, however, it also opens up your ability to enable and disable individual apps from the store. So this is now sort of another degree of control that you can use to be able to actually decide, hey, we're only going to allow certain types of apps from the store, but not others. And then similarly for the security review policy, you can see that we can actually choose to not show new apps that come through the store. So we're constantly getting new applications that are getting submitted through AppSource. You can actually turn off the ability to ingest those into your organization, and then you can actually review them on a one-by-one basis. So they'll show up basically as disabled until you choose to actually take them in. So this gives you a sense in sort of what's there currently. And so this behavior now starts to become really interesting then when you start looking at policy. So I mentioned messaging policy. How does that actually come together? So if you look, for example, policy is basically an aspect that allows you to stipulate default settings for a community of users. And you can stipulate multiple configurations of those settings. So in fact, if I wanted to, I have a default org-wide, but I can create a new policy. And you see when I create a new policy, I can say this is my IT group. And then I can go ahead and actually say which default messaging policies are going to be for that IT group. So I'm going to allow URL previews, and I'm going to save. And now I have another policy group that's opened up for that. So the work that we're doing basically is going to be to now start opening up that same type of policy-based approach to app settings as well. So when you look at those, what that starts to drive then is where we had the behavior for basic behaviors on an organizational level, now we have the ability for you to actually have values for permissions that you can manage, so you can actually have different catalogs for different communities of users. And you can also now actually start to configure different policies about do you allow sideloading, what kinds of things can they do, and even to the point of being able to support pinning and unpinning against the left rail. So that's going to be a set of capabilities that will help you actually get those apps into the user's hands without really having to go through a lot of sort of intervention from their perspective. And then finally, one of the things that we talked about is you heard patients really speak about sort of the interaction and the feedback and being able to monitor how people are actually using the application. And so one of the things that you'll be looking at for us in the very near future is actually providing you as the IT owners for those apps more information and insight over the usage and the analytics of the applications that you've actually deployed into your organization. Now, what that starts to open up then is that in addition to the existing behaviors, one of the things that you'll see very soon is actually a whole set of capabilities that are now starting to get exposed for tooling underneath managing the apps and the teams that go inside of those. And so on the tooling front, not only will you have the PowerShell tooling that comes with policy-based management, and not only will you have some of the new experiences on the portal, but you'll actually also have the ability to now start managing some of these things directly through new graph APIs that are opened up in the beta. So I encourage you to go and take a look at those as you look through that. As you're thinking through that, the question becomes, so how does that start to fit into the model for managing applications? So one of the key things to understand is as you're working with these personal scoped apps and these team scoped apps, all of these teams and these apps go through a life cycle. So if I'm in an education situation, I might want to have to spin up a new class every semester or every term with different sets of students. When the term is over, I might want to go ahead and archive those classes. If I'm an airline, I might want to have a new team for every new flight crew that's coming in or every flight segment. So there's a lot of varieties where, in fact, I might want to be able to focus the collaboration on some of these areas and be able to seed that collaboration with the right content, the right people, and the right apps. And so the automation lets me help to do that even through to the end of the process where I'm actually archiving that information out for future storage and use. So there's a collection of APIs that are open up on the team side that allow you to actually drive for channels, for members, for apps, for metadata, for messages. And in fact, yesterday you saw that there were some new behaviors that we showed for templates as well. So being able to actually create these things as a template and in fact clone those things so that in fact when you have a set pattern that you like, it's very easy for you to just go ahead and recreate those things very quickly. So again, these are all sort of aspects that I would encourage you to take a look at. And with that, I will go ahead and we're getting close to time, so I will wrap up with some next steps. So we can walk through sort of a bunch of different pieces here, but the key thing to understand is it's both the tech and the pattern and practice. And so I want to encourage all of you to learn from example, to see sort of the opportunity in your organization to make an impact with custom apps, and to really get started, even if it's just some basic things with building some content in SharePoint and starting to pin it, right? Started with a SharePoint site, how do you start to expand on that and extrapolate from that? And then also be able to now start really incorporating the tools that are coming in the very near future to help you with the distribution and the access for those capabilities in a way that's going to fit within your process. Now, as I said, this is really the first of many sessions that we're going to be delivering this week. We have another one later this afternoon at 4 where we'll be walking through kind of even broader set of impact and stories about the platform. So I want to encourage you to join us for that. But we have a number of other sessions that cover everything from how to build your bot in 5 minutes to thinking about sort of how these platform capabilities can start to be used in even more tailored ways for things like meetings and being able to start connecting that in with your real-time communications. So with that, a bunch of assets. You'll be able to see this on the recording after the fact. We really want to encourage everyone to check out our dev center and get going. We also want to encourage on the IT front, there's a bunch of best practices for thinking about deployment and other pieces. So again, encourage you guys to sort of check that out. With that, we have a couple of minutes for Q&A. Happy to take any questions. Yes?
So what have been some successful apps that you've seen a lot of businesses start with? So we had like the help support bot. What are some other, I guess, starter ideas for those of us who are looking to build something but haven't jumped in yet?
Great question. So the question is what are some ideas about sort of starting projects? Where do people get started with success? So I think employee services is where I think a lot of people sort of tend to start. Tends to, I think, come out of the idea that they're the ones, the IT guys are the ones that are deploying teams. So I've seen a lot of folks talking about help desk. I've seen a lot of folks doing something similar with the Dentsu example where they're looking at, hey, how do I help people understand more about teams? The other place that I say that I think we're seeing a lot of is really just trying to understand, I'll say sort of the core function of what you're trying to get done and really targeting that first. So that sort of depends on how focused your business is. At Microsoft, for example, one of the first apps that we're going to do is not a help desk thing, it's actually transportation. So we have a shuttle system to help us around Microsoft, and so scheduling shuttles is a thing, and I've got to talk to the admin, I've got to do some other stuff. But my ability to actually just schedule a shuttle very quickly from my mobile device or from my desktop, simple, short app, something everybody does every single day. You're just trying to get people to the idea of how can they be more productive in teams. So I would just say that's kind of the ethos that I would start with, and then really the rest of it's kind of just need and best fit. But great question. Other questions? All right, awesome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks to the Dentsu folks.